Welcome, Bruins. Thank you for joining today's Career Coaches Insights series, Ask the Career Coach, Job Search Tips, Questions, and Answers, with career coach and workplace consultant, Emily Baxt. My name is Joseph Blancas, and I serve as an Associate Director for Alumni Career Engagement at the UCLA Alumni Association. In today's program, Emily will share 10 minutes of her favorite job search strategies and then answer your questions. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Alumni Association sustaining donors. It's with your help that we are able to strengthen the Bruin community with career programs like this. For some general webinar housekeeping, we will be using the Q&A function to sort through live submitted questions, so please submit your questions there, and we will get to them time permitting. We've also received some questions via registration, and we will address those as well. We will be recording today's event and we'll send it out once the recording is made available. Now, to start our program, I'm excited to introduce Emily Bax. Emily is an experienced, compassionate career counselor and coach who enjoys helping people figure out how their strengths can benefit the world. Many of her clients are early to mid-career professionals, parents returning to work, or successful professionals looking for something more. She enjoys listening to her clients' stories, helping them identify barriers that may hinder their career success, and collaborating to identify next steps. Emily, thank you so much for being here. I'll turn the program over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Joseph. I'm always excited to work with my alma mater. Bruins, welcome. I'm going to go and share my slide deck as we get started here. As Joseph said, we are going to be really focusing on your needs today. So answering questions that you have. I read through all of the questions that were sent to me via registration and pulled some themes out, and I'm going to try to address those. First 10 minutes or so, we're going to be looking at some very specific job search tips. So I'll try to address some of those questions there. Joseph gave me a beautiful introduction, so thank you for that. I am a career counselor and coach. I started doing that over 20 years ago. In the past 10 years, I've also started doing quite a bit of workplace consulting. So my whole career is around career, right? So helping teams work better together and helping people feel like they have a better fit in their work. You can see also along the way, I did get my degree from UCLA in '92. I have an MA in counseling from the University of San Diego, some licenses and certifications. But the thing I'm most excited about, you can see here this P27. I am a parent of a Bruin. So exciting for me to be part of a multi-generational Bruin family. And maybe my daughter might be a little less excited about that than I am, but it makes it really fun for me to have her on campus now. We're going to start with these key job search tips. And like I said, these are the things that I find myself sharing over and over again with my clients who are looking for jobs. And then we're going to move fairly quickly into the Q&A. I have tailored some of these job search tips to some of the questions that I got ahead of time. So you will hear me trying to bring some of those out as we go through. So tip number one, the first thing I like to start with is you've really got to tailor your materials. So this is something you've probably heard before. It's become increasingly important over the past 10 to 15 years to make sure you have the keywords in your resume, for example, to get through an applicant tracking system. So different companies use applicant tracking systems in different ways. There are some organizations where a human being really does read every single application, and that's fantastic. We still want to make sure you have those keywords to make that reader, make it easier for that reader to see how you're qualified for a role. What I like to do is look at the job description, right? See what are the specific terms they're looking for, the skills that they seek, and make sure that you reflect those in your resume. You can't send the same exact resume to every single job. I'm not saying you have to rewrite your entire resume, but I do want you to tailor it. Think about the user experience, right? Your audience is that particular recruiter or hiring manager. They have a problem, and the problem is they're lacking someone in their office, and they've written a description to say, this is our dream of who we're looking for. Your job in your materials is to make sure that you tailor your experience, the 1 or 2 pages that you're providing for them, to show them how you can fulfill their role and how you can solve their problem. So that's really the goal in looking through that. Um, you absolutely want to highlight your relevant experience, skills, and accomplishments. Again, tailoring that specifically to the job ad. One thing I see frequently in resumes is people will have a description of their job that sounds a little more like a task list, right? It's kind of like, here's all the things I do or all the things I'm responsible for at work. And that's a very natural way to want to talk about your job, right? Trying to like just get all that information in there. But what I want to look at when I'm working with somebody on really deepening their resume or improving their resume is how can you talk about what you accomplished, right? Like you have these different tasks that you're required to do, but what happened because you did those tasks? What was the impact? So there's a variety of ways to think about that. Of course, every role is different, but I want you to ask yourself questions like this. What am I proud of from that last job? If you're a recent graduate, it could be, what am I proud of from that volunteer experience or that club experience that I did while I was on campus? Start with that. Don't worry about it sounding like resume talk. Instead, just jot that down or talk that through with someone. Then we start to see, okay, this thing that you're proud of, is there a way we can pull that into your resume? Because it's probably going to show someone not just what you did, but how you are at it, what strengths you bring, what skills you bring. And it's often the things that you really like to do. So, in a forward looking way, it's what you want to keep doing. Other materials like the cover letter, again, you really want to use these to respond to the job ad. One of the questions I get all the time is, do I really need to write a cover letter? And my answer is maybe. Right? It just really depends on the industry and the role. I hear from tech recruiters, many tech recruiters tell me, oh, I don't look at cover letters. We're going straight off the resume looking at skills. I talk to hiring managers and recruiters from other types of organizations, and I hear, oh, I don't even look at the resume until I read the cover letter. I want to understand why this person's applying for the job. So part of it is really understanding the field or the role that you're applying to, the culture, and what they're looking for. I think a cover letter is a great chance for you to tell your story and to continue your career narrative beyond the page of your resume. The cover letter is going to give you the opportunity to really share things about your experience, but also things about you as a person, right? Like why you care about this particular role, why you want to work for this particular organization. So in the cover letter, make sure you say why them, right? Why do you want to work for them? But also why you? And that can't be just a generic letter. It's got to be, again, responding to the job ad. Again, looking at time, I'm not saying you have to write a cover letter from scratch every single time you use a cover letter, but the more cover letters you write, the more pieces you're going to have. Like, oh, this is my paragraph about my communication skills. This is a little chunk that talks about my ability to manage supply chain. Whatever the pieces are that you're telling about, you're going to have these kind of pre-written blocks of text that you can just start pulling and building your cover letters that way. One tool I want to mention, and I think Sarah's going to share it in the chat for you, is called jobscan.co. So jobscan.co, it's not .com. JobScan is an AI tool that will compare a job ad against your resume and help you see if you're hitting those keywords. It uses really similar technology to the applicant tracking systems, and it gives you kind of a back-end view of how your resume might be read when you submit it. I'm a big believer in free, and there is a free plan with JobScan that lets you do, I think, 5 resume and job ad matches the first month, and then you get a certain number each month after. That's usually plenty, right? After you do a couple of them, you'll start to see what you're missing and what you need to be doing. So I think you can absolutely move forward in that way. One last thing I want to address here is AI, because I get a lot of questions about that as well. Like, can I just have ChatGPT write my cover letter? I mean, I think that AI is a fantastic tool. So I would say use it as a thought partner. Use it as an idea and draft generator. Don't use it to do your final copy just because why? Right? Like I feel like there's a lot of people who can start to identify like there's certain patterns that show up in ChatGPT style writing. It can sound hollow. but I think it can be a great tool. Like one of the things I like to do with it is I'll put in a resume and say, write a 50-page or 50-word about section for a LinkedIn, like the summary section. And I have it generate 3 or 4 of those. You're going to start seeing like, what are the themes that my resume give to other people? And then also maybe you'll start seeing some ideas of like, oh, I want to pull that out. That's a great point. It's a way to generate ideas. All right, that's my tip number 1, tailoring your materials. Second piece, and I find myself telling clients this over and over again, I want you to diversify your job search strategies as much as possible, right? Everyone is participating in the online job search. I'm quite sure if you're looking for a job, you're looking at listings online. We want to be able to expand that though, as much as you can. So online search is definitely part of your search. You have to do it. But I would say beyond LinkedIn, Indeed, and some of those larger platforms, which are excellent platforms, by the way, but beyond those, look for specialty job search boards. And what I mean by that is if you have a very specific industry or functional area, look to see if you can find some active job boards in that area. It could be through a professional organization. They may have job listings, particularly for a local area. It could just be some other type of grouping that pulls together those different listings, but see if you can find those. Another thing I've been recommending to people the past year or so is to follow recruiters on LinkedIn for organizations that really interest you. So with LinkedIn, to connect with someone is like, will you be friends with me, right? Like to do that. But you can almost always follow someone, and that means you're going to see their posts come up in your feed. I have seen a few instances in the past year or so where recruiters will post about a job, but the job listing is not on LinkedIn. And that's for various reasons, right? Maybe they were overwhelmed with applications when they posted the job on LinkedIn, or maybe they are looking for like some type of referral, like friend of a friend kind of thing. It could be they didn't want to pay to post on LinkedIn. But if you follow recruiters occasionally, you will see opportunities come up from those different organizations. But I want you to diversify your job search beyond the online job search because you've probably experienced that the online job search is soul crushing. Like to me, it is incredibly difficult. The output does not relate to the input, right? So you can be writing fantastic cover letters, beautiful resumes, completely tailored to the job, submitting, and you get nothing back, right? You hear nothing. And in the absence of information, our minds create stories, and those stories usually are not good, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm never going to get a job. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have enough experience. Like, whatever the story is that your brain creates is not helpful. And that's just kind of like the online job search, that whole silence is part of it, but it's very hard not to take that personally. So, what I encourage people to do most of all is talk to human beings, right? Connect with people. You've got to let your network know how they can help you. So, if you are looking to talk to people or meet people in a specific industry or a specific type of role or a specific city, if you let people know that, then their minds can start working and find people for you. Like if you just say, I'm looking for a job, I'll take anything, people are like, how do I help you? But if you say, I'm really looking for a marketing role and I want to stay in the Southern California region, and maybe I want to work in digital marketing, then the person you're talking to is like, oh, actually, my neighbor works in digital marketing. It gives them something specific to help you with and a way to direct that search. I would attend industry events to broaden the number of people that you are exposed to. I know there are some people right now in the audience that are like, I would rather never have a job again than have to go to a networking event. We're going to talk about that. But being able to surround yourself with people who have information about the field that interests you can be really, really beneficial. And at those industry events, if you meet people, you can just meet them briefly, get their contact information. The goal is to follow up later for a longer conversation, because really what we want to be doing is scheduling these informational interviews or coffee chats, whatever you want to call them. But it's It's a chance for you to connect with a person and talk to them about their work. Now, I know I had a few questions about people who were like, how do I use this effectively? Like, what do I do at an industry event or how do I network effectively? To me, an industry event is really just about m- making connections, right? If you go in with the goal of like, I'm going to get a job from this, like that can be very stressful. But if instead it's like, let me go see if I can have at least one good conversation with someone, that takes the pressure way down and it gives you the opportunity to connect as a person. Um, if you, like I said, if you meet a few people at an industry event, get their contact info, great. Then you can follow up with these informational interviews or conversations. The goal of these is not to reach out to someone and say, can you get me a job? Right? Because that's like super uncomfortable for you and for them. We have to reframe the focus. And it's really about I'm gathering data because that's what you need to be doing when you're doing a job search, right? Like, let me collect data. And sometimes what the data is how does this person like working for this company? What is their experience like working in this company? Or what is a typical day like for them at this company? So being able to really collect some of that information is going to help you with your decision making, with figure out where you want to apply. It may help you figure out like what you want to include on your resume. It's going to give you some more information and more data. It's also wonderful to talk to someone who is employed in a field and is hopefully enjoying their work because it's a reminder to you that that does happen in this world, right? And that there are jobs that could be interesting, employment, there's interaction. It's much more motivating for most people than just applying to that black hole and never hearing back. Now, the baseline that we're hoping from any info interview is just that we're going to collect some data, right? We're going to get some information. But I also know that if you do enough of them, eventually you will get that hookup, right? Like somebody who tells you about somebody who might be able to hire you, somebody who tells you about a job posting that's not online. Maybe somebody tells you about one of these specialty job search boards, right? There's often the benefit of some extra piece of information. Maybe they offer to review your resume for you. Like there's extra things that can happen. With any individual informational interview, I do not expect it, right? That is the key. It's like you can't expect that from any individual one, but I know overall, if I keep doing this, it is going to really diversify your job search, particularly if you ask some advice questions toward the end of the conversation, like, what do you recommend for someone like me as I'm applying to these types of roles? And is there anyone else you recommend I talk to? One last tool that I want to, or I mean, obviously LinkedIn is a tool I've mentioned. Definitely use UCLA One. So that is our alumni networking platform. It can be an excellent way to find Bruins who are working in fields or companies that may be of interest to you. All right, job search tip number 3. I really encourage you to track your efforts. And it's a way to measure both your progress in the job search and help you maintain your motivation. So a job search is a marathon. It can really take more time than you want it to. A lot of people don't enjoy looking for jobs. I think it's super fun because it's my job, right? I love supporting people as they're going through this, but I know that that is not everyone's experience. So one of the things that I recommend is create boundaries and block time for your job search. And what I mean by creating boundaries is really look to yourself and say, how much time can I truly commit to my job search each week? Is it 1 hour? Is it 40 hours? Like figure out what that time is. And then I want you to block that in your calendar, right? So maybe it's like, I can do 5 hours a week and I'm going to do it Tuesdays and Thursdays after I drop the kids off. So like, from 10 to 12:30, that's when I do it. The reason that this is important is because it prioritizes your job search. It makes time for you to do it. But it also can help you from having that sense of always thinking you need to be working on your job search, right? Like maybe you're like trying to go to the beach or go out with friends, and in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, I really should be working on my job. Like, I don't want you to not enjoy your life, right? And it's also not helpful or healthy. So instead, if we can block that time, commit that time, and spend that time working on the job search, you can try to take some of that pressure off the rest of the time and be able to say, like, yes, brain, I hear you, and I am going to be working on my job search. Remember, I do that Tuesday and Thursday from 10 to 12:30. I'm writing a note. I'll do that thing then, or whatever it is. You also want to use some kind of tracking tool. So I love a good spreadsheet. So for me, I love the idea of creating a spreadsheet that has like, here's a job I applied for, and here's where I found that job, and here was the, whatever, like the time that they replied, did I hear back, whatever, like tracking that information so that you can go back at the end of a week and say like, oh, actually I applied to this many jobs. I have another tab on my spreadsheet where I'm like, I also track all those informational interviews and those conversations. Who did I reach out to? Did they reply? Did we schedule it? If I talked to them, what kind of, information or next steps did they share? Having that in one place is going to help you stay organized. It's also going to help you, like I said, at the end of the week, you could check back and say, okay, maybe I don't have a job yet, but I did do this, 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 and this. And that can really take away that sense of like black and white thinking, right? Like either I have a job or I'm a failure, right? Like either I've gotten it or haven't. That's a very stiff boundary, right? To be like between it's either yes or no. But instead, if I can say, these are all the things I accomplished this week, and this is how I've been moving forward toward that goal of getting a job. It can actually help you stay more motivated. And you can also set yourself goals, right? I'm going to apply to this many jobs, or I'm going to do this many things. I'm going to talk to this many people, however you want to do it. And then you can reevaluate. And that's the key thing too, is set those goals and adjust them as necessary. See if they're working for you, right? See if it's maybe you need to do more, maybe you need to do less, maybe you need to do different, something differently. So being able to go through that. And this one's my favorite too for motivation. You've got to celebrate your wins. Right? If you get an interview, that is a win. If you get an interview from just applying online and they have no referral and they have no idea who you are, I want to have a party for you. Like that is huge. You've got to celebrate those wins as you go through, whether it's completing your goals, getting an interview, talking to somebody, whatever the piece is, you need to be able to focus on that positive as you move forward so that you can keep yourself moving forward through this marathon. One tool that I will mention on here, and I'll send an email afterward, by the way, with all of these tools that I've mentioned. One tool that I think can be really helpful is some people love Teal's extension, so TEAL. The Teal extension is a way to track different jobs you've applied to. I can't control it enough. I need my spreadsheet because I love, that's what works for my brain. But I have other clients who say that it's really helpful because it automatically pulls some of that info. One last pro tip: when you are applying to jobs online, take a screenshot or download a PDF or something of the job description. So many times I have had people say to me, I'm so excited I got this interview. I kind of remember applying for the job, but now I can't find it online. Well, that's because now that they've had enough applicants that they're going to interview, they've taken that job listing down. And now you have no idea what you're interviewing for beyond the job title in the company. So just anytime you apply, save that PDF, throw it up, somewhere on your desktop. Have that so that you can reference it if you do get an interview. All right. You can use this QR code, or Sarah is going to drop in the chat a link. This is like 2 questions. I think it's your name and your email address. This is just for me to collect your info if you want to receive the key slides I sent and some of the different tools that I talked about. And I have written up too, I'll write up some of the steps that I talked about with those details. So please feel free to fill that out. Probably easier for you to do it if you're on your computer, to just do it with the link. But I'm just going to leave that up for a moment. And I want you to know that like I said, I read your questions. I see that more coming in the Q&A, and Joseph's going to help me sort through those. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides so that we can get into it.
Yes, thank you so much, Emily. Those are some great tips. Definitely resonated with a lot of them. And I can tell from the chat and people submitting questions that they also um, are struggling with some of these key job search areas. So thank you for putting together that deck. We're going to get into our Q&A with you. But for those who are tuning in, we are going to throw into the chat a post-program feedback survey. So we would like to know, how this session went as far as the content. while we transition into the Q&A. For those who are sticking around, if you could take some time to submit your feedback there, it allows us to get some clarity on future programs and different tools and resources that we can share with all of you from the Alumni Association to help you in your career and professional development needs. So to kick us off, we had some questions come in via registration that we're going to start off with, and then we will go to those that have been submitted. The first one for you, Emily, is do you have any suggestions for experienced professionals exploring a career change into a different field or industry?
I love this question because this is one of my favorite things to work with, right? Is helping people figure out like, what is that next thing? Or maybe they know what that next thing is, and how do we get from here to there? With a pivot like this, I really think the first step is doing a gap analysis. And what I mean by that is looking at like, if here's the job where I want to be, and I'm reading through that job description, whether it's, industry, functional, area change, whatever it is, reading through that and then looking at where I am currently, what's that gap, right? Like what am I missing? What do I need to do to make that transition? Um, and sometimes closing that gap it's always going to be multi-layered, but I think part of it is looking at your materials. And again, taking that user experience view, the UX view of I have a new audience looking at me. What do they care about my background? And how do I make my resume reflect and show those transferable skills and show them what I already have? Um, the other times, sometimes we do that gap analysis and it becomes very clear, like, wow, I can't do that job unless I have this particular degree, right? Like maybe there's a credential or something somebody had, like I can't be an attorney without a JD, right? Like, so sometimes we see that, but sometimes it might just be a skill. Like if I take this class and learn this particular skill, or maybe I need to go do a project in this area, even if it's pro bono or, helping out in a different area somehow. Being able to show those skills or develop those skills to close that gap. And then, of course, talking to people, working that informational interview, because when you can talk to people and they can see who you are, they can picture you in that role a lot easier than when they're just looking at a piece of paper.
Along the same line of kind of changing careers with regards to resumes, what would you suggest would be the best format for someone who's they're asking a 50-year-old looking to career change? Any suggestions you have around building a resume and what that might look like?
When I have somebody who's later in their career, I assume usually somebody in their 50s has significant work experience at that point. um, we have to carve it out, right? Like so in terms of a resume, especially if you're doing a career change, it's probably not helpful to see every job that you've had back, till from when you graduated from UCLA. So instead, I'm really looking at again, what are the skills that are going to be most relevant and experiences to this new audience? And from there, it's really looking at how do we present that forward and push that forward with anyone, past the age of 40 something. We also have to be cognizant of potential ageism. I'm a big fan of not going all the way back to your very first job and not putting dates on when you completed your degree just because it's not relevant, and it's what we want to focus on are those skills that you have that are going to help you transition into this new role. So it's a really long way of me saying I think the best format that I would look at would probably be 1 to 2 pages, depending on how much experience that you're including. We might just do 1 page at this point. Um, I do think that most recruiters like to see the chronological format, right? Where you have like most recent work back to oldest work, but we're going to highlight the pieces of that job of each of those experiences that are most relevant to that particular area. If, I mean, depending on the situation, sometimes we will create subheadings so that jobs that might be older that are more relevant pull up to the top. So it could be like marketing experience pulls up ahead of whatever your current thing is, or something like that. But generally, I think sticking with a chronological format tends to be most effective, but we have to use the whole document to create your narrative and shape you toward that new role.
Mhm. Great, thank you.
Sure.
Another question was around kind of the cycles of um, hiring and recruiting. So an attendee asked, it seemed like January had very positive hiring signals, but have since dried up, and there are some announcements specifically that came from Stanford about a hiring freeze. UCLA actually just got one from the president of the UC system. So, do you have any thoughts around your experience around annual hiring cycles? What can they expect to have more, when could they expect to have more success with the job application and job search process?
Um, I'm going to start by saying, I don't know, right? Like, I'm not an economic expert. So I'm just going to put that. Now I'm still going to talk and say things, but I just want to say, like, I wish I knew. I would say since COVID, I have had no idea what is going on with the economy. And I don't think I'm the only one, right? Like, it's like certain industries are great, others are done. Like, now, like 2 years ago, my CS people couldn't get jobs. And then, like, the tech money freezing up slowly trickle down. I see it now in biotech. Like, there's just like, I saw a lot of hesitancy around hiring around the election. Like, people were waiting for the election, I think. And then I've seen the same pause, of course, since the inauguration and the new administration coming in. There's a lot of hesitancy and a lot of waiting. That said, I think other than giving yourself grace and patience, try to let go of all that while you're working on your individual job search, right? Like, it's helpful, I think, to have kind of that micro awareness or excuse me, macroeconomic awareness. But at the same time, you've got to control what you can control. That's your materials, you're connecting with people and reaching out for jobs. One thing I've experienced in the, decades that I've been doing this work is the economy can be fantastic. And I can say the average amount of time it takes for somebody to get a job is 8 weeks, but that means nothing to any individual person I'm working with, right? The person I'm working with could get a job in 1 week, or they could get a job in 50 weeks. So I try to say, like, let's take that data, but also don't focus on it too much. Focus on what you can control and just be like, yeah, this may not be the best market for my industry right now. It's okay.
Mhm.
Moving forward.
Another question that came in was around, tailoring your materials. What is the best way to highlight your accomplishments? What is the best language to show that a project was a big success?
Mhm. Yeah, I love working on this with people. I think this is really fun. For me, the question that I ask if you have an accomplishment is what was the result? Because that's really what we're getting at with an accomplishment, right? Like, so maybe you did a thing, but what happened because of that thing? What was the impact? Was it that you saved your department 26% of the budget for that particular thing? Was it that, you know, you had an increase of 72% more followers? Um, Sometimes you have work too that's like difficult to have a metric like that. If you can get a metric, please use it. It's really, really helpful. But otherwise, it's looking at why did it matter? And that's really what it comes down to. I'll say, like, for each bullet I have on my resume, I'll say to myself, so what? Like, so why did that matter? What happened? And if that's not clear, then I'll add that language in there. So sometimes it's saying, I'm going to, obviously, this is kind of paraphrasing, but like, did a thing resulting in blah, blah, blah. So have that second half of the sentence to really show that accomplishment.
Awesome, thank you. Um, Another question that came in is around your tip on, following recruiters on LinkedIn. This attendee asked, how can I identify recruiters to follow on LinkedIn for a specific company or type of position?
Yeah, honestly, it's easier to do it for a particular company, right? So, because if we're looking at a functional area, it could be like any company in the world. What you can do is if you go onto LinkedIn and go to that company's page. So let's say it's Illumina. If you go to Illumina's page, like their company page, there's a series of choices just underneath that, and one of them will say people. And if you click that, it's going to pull up every single person who is on LinkedIn who say they work at Illumina. But then in the search bar, you can type in words like recruiter, recruiting, talent acquisition, human resources, anything like that. And that's where you can start to filter and identify the people that are probably posting about those searches.
And a follow-up question to that, do you recommend trying to meet with a recruiter even if they don't have any job postings?
I don't think it can hurt, right? It goes back to that talk to a human being. Um, Recruiters generally are constantly building, they are natural connectors, right? They're constantly sourcing people, they're constantly connecting. I ask recruiters a lot, like, do you mind if people who are job searching reach out to you, or like, are they bothering you? And over, I hear like, no, even if I don't have time to reply to every message I get on LinkedIn, I like to see it. It tells me this person's interested, right? It's another touch point. So I think in general, that's that they're expecting that. If you have someone who is not recruiting for a role that you're interested in, like your type of role, or they don't have something open in that, I think if you try to reach out and talk, they might be able to give you some other information. They might be able to tell you what the hiring, they might say like, I don't have anything right now, but in Q3, that's when we're, planning to get our numbers for budgeting or whatever, like staffing budget. They might be able to give you some of that type of information. Or if you catch somebody on a good day, sometimes they're willing to like give you some feedback on your resume or give you some other suggestions. The worst thing that's going to happen is you reach out to them and they don't get back to you. And we're all used to that now.
Mm.
So go
Or
for
they
it.
could be aware of opening at a different company because they
Absolutely.
have colleagues or other, connections that they are aware of.
Yeah, 100%. And anytime you have a connection like this and you have an informational interview or with a talk to a hiring manager or recruiter, just show your gratitude. I think that's the key thing is send that thank you note afterward and let them know it made a difference. If you end up getting an interview or a conversation or a job, follow up and let them know. That's somebody in your network now. And I think everyone likes to know that the impact they made, right? Like if they knew they helped you get a job, they're going to feel good about that.
Mhm. This question is around, networking and building connections as well. How do you gain confidence in networking and building connections with others when you are an introvert or, don't like being put in those social settings?
Yes. And I totally get this. And this is a very common piece. I work a lot with engineers, and I hear a lot, and not to be stereotypical, but many engineers have a preference for introversion. And I will hear people be like, oh God, please don't make me network. Like, do I have to do that? So when you're trying to gain confidence in this area, there's a couple of steps that I like to take, right? Because part of it is just knowing what to do. Like part of it is just learning the skill or the task. Like, this is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to go forward. That really helps with anything with confidence building, I think, if you know what you're expected to do. But what I like to look at is how can we make networking feel authentic and work well for you? So the first thing I like to look at is I'm like, what kind of networking do you want to participate in? What looks like success for you with networking? Because what I have in mind might be very different from this person, right? So being able to kind of first sort that out. Then what we try to look at is how can we get really specific about small steps you can take to build your strengths and confidence in this area. So, for example, if I have somebody identify that they want to start doing informational interviews, talking to people who work in a particular field, for example, but that just feels like overwhelming for them, we'll work on, can we find anybody who does that? Like, does your aunt work in this field? Let's start with that low hanging fruit, right? Like somebody who's less stressful, or even do an info interview with somebody like that who you know and feel comfortable with, even if they're not in your field of interest, just doing it. So we kind of look like what are small steps we can take to help you build your confidence beyond just like knowing having the skill piece, because the skill piece I think is pretty straightforward and we can work on that. But if really what we're looking at is how do we build the confidence, it's being able to reframe also. Oh, I have something else I just thought of too when I said reframe. Um, so often people are worried that informational interviews or networking is bothering people, right? It's the sense of like, oh my gosh, these people are so busy, they're already successful. Like, why would they want to talk to me? It's bothering them. I try to help you reframe and think of times that people have asked you for help, and how you felt about it. So an example I like to use if I'm working, for example, with college students, I'll be like, what if your high school English teacher reached out to you and said, oh, I know you're home for spring break this week. I know you're super busy. You're probably trying to see all your friends. But would you mind coming to my class and telling them about what it's like to go to college? I'm like, are you offended by that? Like, are you angry that your English teacher is reaching out and asking you that? No, like most people are like, oh, I'm kind of like me. I'm kind of flattered. That's often how people receive requests for help and advice. They're like, oh yeah, I want to help. Like, I do know something. I do have something to offer this person. So try to reframe that in your mind that you're not necessarily bothering them, and you do have something to offer them as well, which is your attention. And people don't get a good listening very often. So being able to really listen to them and thank them afterward,
Mhm.
that may be enough.
Yeah, I definitely think that it goes a long way when you express gratitude. Um, Great. We have a quite a bit of questions in here, so I'm going to try to get through them quickly. One of our attendees asked, how far back should one go on their resume? Um, and because some jobs ask for an entire experience, but yeah, how far back would you
Yeah.
suggest?
So on an application, somebody may ask for like every single job you've ever had. And of course, if you're applying for a job that like requires a security clearance or something, that's different. Like they're going to want every single detail. But in general, when you're applying with a resume, the most recent 10 years are going to be the most important pieces of information. I'm not saying you can't include something from before that 10 years, but if I see somebody and they have this much about like the past 5 years and this much about the past 15 years, I want to flip that, right? Like I really want to see the recent. What have you done lately? That's what people care about. There's an exception to every single rule, of course. Like if you want to show something from farther back because it's really relevant to the thing you're applying to now, of course that makes sense. Like we're trying to figure out what is the most relevant. But when I'm working with people who have significant experience, I'm really focused on the past, most recent 10 years, but inclusive up to 15 to 20, depending on what they've done.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Another attendee submitted a question. They're a recent grad with relevant internship experience, um, but they wonder, should I be applying through campus recruiting? Most jobs ask you to be a current student or experienced hire, need at least 1 year of experience. I feel like I do not fit either category.
Isn't it the worst? That whole like, we need experience, but you can't have experience until you have experience. I don't know. It's confusing. So a couple things on that. Let me address all of that. I would say if you're a recent grad, Handshake is going to be your good friend, right? So Handshake, if you're not familiar, is the platform that many universities, including UCLA, use to post job listings. So you have access to Handshake. You probably can log in with your UCLA credentials. Just look at the Career Center if you don't know where that link is.
I just want to chime in. You have
Yep.
access to that up to 3 months after you graduate. If you'd like access to it after that, I believe you do have to pay a fee as an alum.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Joseph. Good to know.
But then there's UCLA One, which does um, uh, uh, I don't know what the right word is, but all the postings that go onto Handshake are also put onto UCLA One, which is free to all alumni and students.
Okay, that is fantastic to learn because I did not know that. The reason I love Handshake is because it is, I mean, I love LinkedIn because it's got like a lot of things. Handshake is like a subset where it's recent college graduates and college students and recruiters who are looking to hire for those positions. So for the most part, it's kind of that subset of that entry level chunk. Yeah, let's talk about that 1 year experience thing though. So you have relevant intern experience. I'm going to call that experience. Like you have that. When you are looking at a job ad, if it says like I want this, and you're looking through it and you're like, I have 7 of the 10 things, so I can't apply because I don't have all the requirements. I'm going to tell you right now, go ahead and apply. Okay. That job description where they're saying, I want all of these things is a wish list. It's like the dream that they came up with of the candidate that they want. And they're going to put it out there and then they're going to see what they get. Right. Like, and I will tell you, there are certain people who will apply if they have 50% of the qualifications. I want that to be you too. right? Go ahead and apply. If they really meant that they want 1 year of full-time paid work experience, then they're going to throw your resume away. So what? You're used to that, right? Like that happens. But what I find is that if you look at a job ad and you're like, I could do that. And in fact, I even have some internship experience, that's similar to that. Go ahead and apply. Um, Job descriptions are guidelines, right? For the most part. You will find sometimes, like I said, there is really like something that they really, really are requiring, and that's fine. But I want don't you say no to you, make them say no to you, if that makes sense.
That was great. Great feedback. I like that.
Great.
Um, and if anyone has questions about UCLA 1, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to assist you.
So good to know that they pull the jobs over. I did not know that. See, I learned something new today from Joseph.
Um, Another question we got is from a graduate STEM degree holder. They have been doing independent research in laboratories. They would appreciate your insights into how they could communicate the relevance of their experience to the recruiters in academia as well as industry.
Yes. So depending on the area of STEM that you're in, I know that a lot of my STEM fields are feeling incredible impact right now with what's happening at the federal level. And first, let me just say thank you for being a scientist or a technological project professional. Couldn't get that out, but we need you and I appreciate you. That said, with your resume, you're going to see some differences when you're applying to academia as when you're applying to industry. So with academia, you probably already have this, right? Like your CV, you've got your focus on the academic piece, you've listed every single research project you've ever worked on, you have every publication, every presentation. Like having that CV format is what academia wants to see. So keep that a version like that. I would make another version that is more industry focused. And with that, it's going to be briefer. It's really going to be focused. I would aim for 1 page unless you have more than 10 years of work experience, in which case you can go to a second page. Uh, there's going to be a focus on skills, less on academics. And what I mean by that is you're still going to show your degree, particularly if you got like that PhD or whatever the piece is, you're showing off the degree and then you're showing off those technical skills. So whether that's coding, whether it's wet skills like lab skills, like whatever the piece that you're emphasizing, I want to see that in there. Then with your research experience, being able to pull the scope of your research, tools and techniques, and results. If we can get that in there, that is going to be speaking more toward industry. And so being able to do that, and then just one last little piece, be aware that sometimes the part that industry is worried about academics who are headed to industry in the sciences is that they move too slowly and can be stuck in their ways. Whether or not that is a true, stereotype, just know that's something to get ahead of and, talk about volume, talk about speed, talk about results, talk about willingness to take feedback and to change. So good luck to you as you look for your role.
Thanks. And I do have some templates on, creating a CV versus a resume. So I'll be sure to include that in a follow-up email to everyone who's attending, who are kind of deciding on how to build out a resume. Another question we got was from John, and he is following up on an earlier question around kind of the hiring cycles and how the job search can be a marathon. He's in a tech contract role that ends in August of 2026. And so he's just wondering, when should he start the job search to ensure that he has a role lined up by the end of the contract?
Tell
Do you
me
have
again, when
experience
does
in
the
that?
contract end? Sorry.
August 2026.
Oh, okay, so you've got hopefully a year and a half to go. Um, there's no one answer to this, so I'm going to start with that right there. Um, Kind of as like a rule of thumb in general, what we see is from the day you see something posted and you submit your resume to actually walking in the door and starting the job, 3+ months. Like some people are going to move a lot faster, right? Like a smaller, maybe more nimble, they might be like pulling people in right away. Larger organization can be slower. Of course, government tends to be slower. But that's just kind of a rule of just like a general, if you're looking for kind of a general rule of thumb, I think that can be helpful. Um, I'm someone who thinks it is very helpful to always keep your finger on the pulse, right? Like if you are loving your job and there's a possibility that your contract can become full time, start working on that now, right? What would need to happen? What relationships do you need to develop? What skills do you need to develop? Like, start looking at that. But if you're like, this isn't my dream job, and there's other things, or I've heard rumors that maybe they're going to be doing layoffs, like nothing's permanent, right? Like we hope it goes at least through August, or at most through August 2026. We hope that's coming there. I think it's important to look for what it is that you want. If what you want is a permanent role, then I think being able to look for that and paying attention to that even now, see what's out there. See, now is the time to be building your connections. You can still be doing info interviews right now. You don't want to wait to do that 3 months before you leave. Start going to like tech mingles, whatever, start building your network. The best time to do your networking is when you're not looking for a job. Makes it easier.
Great. Another question we got was from when this person, when they were a young professional, they didn't do a great job of tracking metrics of their accomplishments or saving work to build a portfolio of their own. A lot of what they did stayed with the company after they left. How do you suggest they include these types of accomplishments without having solid evidence?
Mhm. Well, if you don't have like the specific numbers, I think that, you know, you just do what you can. You have what you can. So if you can't say, I'll use my example, grew followers by 72%, you can say made significant growth in followers and, positioned Instagram to be a major driver of sales, or I don't know, I'm just making stuff up right now, but you can still talk about accomplishments even if you don't have numbers or metrics. And in terms of like proof, like what proof does anybody ever have, right? I think it's more you want to show on your document, on your materials that you are qualified to do this role, that you have experience. And then in the interview, they're going to be asking you more questions. So then definitely I would say like refresh yourself on like what did you do in that project, or try to like jot down whatever you do remember and be able to talk about that, because that's I think the only kind of proof people really usually get is like hearing you talk about the steps that you would take in the way that you've tackled past projects.
Awesome, thank you. I think we have time for two more questions. One that I wanted to ask, which I think is great, is this person asked if they were denied a job, the job was filled, and do you suggest they reach out to the company's HR to see what experience was needed, like how their resume lacked, or whether or not their cover letter needed to be stronger, and kind of in what ways they can improve? Is that something you'd recommend to your clients?
You know, I think this is more common if you've had an interview. So if you've had an interview and you weren't selected for a position, um, I- people will reach out and say like, thank you so much. It was a great opportunity. I loved meeting everyone. Um, do you have any feedback for me to strengthen my application? And some companies will just say no or not reply, and that's they've received advice or legal counsel to like not say anything that could come back and bite them. But sometimes you will find people who are willing to give you feedback. I think I don't hear about this as much when you're applying, like if you've just applied and haven't heard back, but you could try, see if somebody will provide you that feedback. But anytime you've applied for a role, and particularly if you've interviewed, maintain that positive relationship if you can. I know it's hard when you are searching and you were excited and you had an interview and you think it was coming, and then you find out no. Um, Complain, vent to your close friends, right, and your partner, but publicly reach back out to that person who interviewed you, thank them, tell them how much you appreciated learning about the organization and that you hope you can stay in touch. You never know when that could pay off later, and that person might be able to know you at a different company or connect you. Or I can tell you of multiple occasions where someone did not receive an offer, and then a month, 6 months later, get a phone call and say the person we hired didn't work out. Are
Mm.
you still interested? And if you flame somebody on the way out, you're not going to get that opportunity. So you want to be able to keep that part positive. But yeah, I mean, if you can have somebody provide you, if somebody's willing to give you feedback, doesn't hurt to ask.
Okay, last question. I know there are still a handful in the Q&A submission, but for the sake of time, this is around the application tracking system. Uh,
Mhm.
is there kind of predominant advice around max of word count, matching the job description versus, any other criteria that one should think about meeting?
I'm not an expert in this area, so I will say that a recruiter could probably tell you much more about an applicant tracking system than I can. But again, the data that I collect, the information I collect from recruiters, what I hear is you want to make sure the keywords are represented, but also formatting matters, which was really surprising to me. I didn't know, but they said those 2-column formats that resumes sometimes have, like I think there's a really popular Google Docs one that's 2 columns, like the career education's on one side and like experience on the other. Apparently, some applicant tracking systems will only pick up the first or second column, one of the columns, which I was like, are you sure it's 2025? We don't have the ability to like have that pulled in, but sometimes things like that, or even having a line that goes all the way across can cause confusion, I guess, in the way that the information is pulled into the system. So I don't have perfect advice on that, but that's what I've got.
Great. Well, we appreciate all the advice you've given today. Emily, it's always a pleasure to see you and hear from you. Any kind of last words of advice or words of wisdom to those attending today?
Yeah. I will say again, I'll send, I know this was really fast. I'll send out as much information, the things I talked about in the email. Just give yourself grace as you're going through the search. It's not fun, right? The job search is really not fun, but it's not personal. For the most part, if you can control what you can control, try to let go of the outcome and just do what you can to keep your motivation up. One day you'll be telling a great story about that time you were searching for a job in 2025.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Emily. And for those who are tuning in, thank you for doing so. If you haven't, please complete the program feedback survey that'll pop up once you close out from today's Zoom webinar. And if you're interested, we have our next Career Coaches Insights webinar called Build a Resilient Career, Harnessing Your Unique Strengths and Transferable Skills with Susan Chang. So I think very fitting for those of you who are attending today's session and thinking about pivoting to a new industry and changing careers. It'll be taking place on Wednesday, April 30th at noon. We'll be throwing into the chat a link to register, but also we'll be including it in our follow-up email along with all the great resources that Emily is going to share with all of us. So thank you for tuning in. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. And Emily, I'll see you next time.
Go Bruins!
Go Bruins. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.